So, a zombie apocalypse video game that was adapted for TV just released one of the most inspiring, beautiful, and carefully crafted queer love stories that I've ever seen. And as usual, a gaggle of people who suckled at the teat of TV tropes are making some incredibly unfair criticisms about the episode.
As much as I loved the love story, The Last of Us fell victim to the bury the gays trope yet again.
Just finished The Last of Us episode 3. I'm destroyed. They did the bury your gays trope.
Yep, I'm gonna complain about them using the kill your gays trope.
No, we will not be doing this. I see this again, and I'm about to bury some gays. In Minecraft. Okay, so spoilers abound for The Last of Us TV series and game, but I keep the discussion almost entirely to this self-contained story, so you can watch this without revealing pretty much anything else about the main series. Despite what a handful of people on Twitter might think, bury your gays isn't just like when gays get buried. And I'll say right off the bat, I don't begrudge anyone for wanting queer love stories where both people survive. We need those. They deserve to be able to see that as much as anyone else does. But not every story needs to end that way, especially in a zombie apocalypse series. Bury your gays isn't just when the LGBTQ+ character dies. It's when a queer character's purpose is reduced to their death. When the entire reason for their existence is to die. It's similar to fridging, a nasty little trope where a female character dies just to give our leading man something to do, a little motivation. It's like one of those hang in there kitty posters, but it's a dead woman. The name fridging comes from a 1994 comic in which Green Lantern returns home to find that his girlfriend has been murdered and stuffed into a fridge. This leads him on a journey of revenge, but his girlfriend's story is over. There is no growth or meaning to her life beyond her death. And this was common enough and happened frequently enough that you could begin to expect that if the leading man has a loving relationship at the beginning of an action movie, that girl was dead. Or she's already dead before the film even begins. Her death is his tragic backstory. And we just get like flashbacks of like some blonde lady running down a lens flare beach saying, "Stop," while the hero films her with a camcorder.
Stop. Seriously, stop.
Like the concept of fridging, the term bury your gays formed in response to what we could come to expect in the media when watching a queer character's portrayal. Philadelphia, Brokeback Mountain, Lost and Delirious, Boys Don't Cry, Buffy, and more recently, The 100 and It Chapter 2. The moment they swished onto your screen, you knew their fate was sealed. Just from the way they walked or talked, you knew for them there would be no happy ending. That the apparent natural conclusion to their story is an early death, or a violent one. It's such a common trope that does the dog die, even does an LGBT person die? Very flattering comparison. This wasn't always the case, but eventually this trope became commonplace enough because the queer or gay characters in film were all being portrayed as depraved, villainous, terrible people. And in a film with a happy ending, the villains get what's coming to them. Now, this wasn't happening because all the people writing films were raging homophobes. Let's be real. Many of them were queer themselves. It was happening because gay people had to be portrayed this way. It was literally codified into an explicit standard that if the audience found themselves to be sympathetic to your queer character, your film was not getting made. This was due to the Hays Code. In the 1930s in the US, there was a very real fear that the federal government was going to take control and directly censor and regulate the content of films. This wasn't an unfounded fear. There were already local and state censorship boards, so federal overreach doesn't sound so far-fetched. So the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, the MPPDA, helped craft the production code to be like, see, you don't need to step in, daddy, we're cleaning our rooms, promise. And that plan worked. And the production code would later become known as the Hays Code, named for the man they brought in to help write it, William Hays.
We must get an outsider, preferably some politician who is above suspicion And they picked the Postmaster General, Will Hayes of Indiana, who looked not unlike Mickey Mouse.
The code sets up high standards of performance for motion picture producers. It states the considerations which good taste and community value make necessary in this universal form of entertainment.
The Hays Code, written by a Jesuit priest and Catholic publisher, was designed as, quote, a code regulating the moral content of feature films, designed so that Hollywood could police itself and thus avoid or minimize outside censorship. It began as, quote, advisory at first, but quickly became more obligatory thanks to outside pressures. Taken by MPPDA Chairman Will Hayes, this code required all major and minor film producers and distributors to submit their scripts in advance of production for censorship by the MPPDA, and to submit their films for code approval before release. Without this approval, their films would not be released, or they were forced to pay expensive fines.
The 1930s Hays Code exiled overtly queer characters into the land of subtext, and then doomed all those that lived there to be villains, murderers, and predators. This way, when the queer trans character died,
people were applauding the death of the villain, but they were also applauding the death of a homosexual.
As perceptions around queer people began to subtly shift, the narrative rapidly swung in the opposite direction. Instead of being detestable, unsympathetic villains, we became tragedies, and our stories became the focus of straight curiosity. With that curiosity came a tolerant but ultimately vapid pity, as narratives about us shifted to address the prevalent homophobia and in turn, the constant queer suffering. We became an archetype of a victim living in a hostile world with no safe place of our own to exist. I'm not saying this wasn't often true, wasn't a part of queer life. It was a part of queer life. What wasn't shown was our joy, our love, our community, and our vibrance, and our perseverance. While we tried our hardest as a community to keep on living, they worked hard to show us only dying. During the AIDS crisis, this narrative became even more pronounced, and the trope of the tragic AIDS death for mass entertainment joined the cast, alongside suicides, overdoses, and straight up getting fucking ganked. And listen, I'm fine with ganking some gays, because the problem isn't merely that queer characters are being killed off. The problem is the trend that queer characters are the ones who are killed off in a story full of mostly cisgender hetero characters. They die as if their death is inevitable. This is the case especially when the reason the character dies is related to their queerness, like being bullied into suicide, dying of an overdose or AIDS because of their sexy party lifestyle, literally getting killed trying to glug some nug, or again, getting straight up hate crimed in the head. Other characters don't die because they are straight. Their deaths are tied to their stories, their journeys, their personalities, and their choices. Key thing there, choices. It might not seem like a notable difference, but it is. It might not seem like it matters, but it does. It isn't that they shouldn't be killing LGBTQ+ characters. It's that the characters should be allowed to have full lives just like the other characters, and their stories should have as much purpose and care as any other. Sure, make them suffer, make their lives difficult, make it hell, make their journeys long and hard, just like every other character. Just don't flatten them out to a 2D representation of queer suffering. Allow them to also experience the joy, fulfillment, and growth the other characters do. We get happy endings too, and that should be reflected in art. Almost 30 years ago, Harvey Fierstein said that,
"My view has always been visibility at any cost. I'd rather have negative than nothing."
And yes, I understand that maybe these negative depictions were necessary steps on the road to representation. I'm just saying we need to keep walking down that road and not halt our progress just because some people think we've gone far enough or gotten too woke. It's one thing for a community to tell their own stories based off their lived experiences, but when people outside the community relegate us to either being damaged or dead or both, it creates an imposed narrative that is not only false, but dangerous. Imagine finding yourself in a world where you're different from everyone you know, including your family. Maybe you don't even know why, maybe it's just a feeling. And then the first time you ever see someone like yourself mirrored back at you in a character, you find someone you can identify with, and they bravely kill themselves in an act of defiance. And then the next time you see yourself represented, they kill themselves from sorrow. And the next time they're murdered, and the next time they're murdered, and the next time they're murdered. I wasn't even in high school before I understood that my love was a sick death sentence. And if that's your future, would it be worth it to stick around just to suffer, just to live to either be violated or violent? The message being broadcast was clear, and it was being broadcast alongside intense depictions of queer characters and trans characters dying by suicide. And their deaths weren't depicted as mistakes they made in the heat of the moment, but as acts of love, acts of rebellion, as if killing yourself was in itself an expression of queerness. An admission that this world was no place for us, has no place for us, and the effects of this are measurable and horrific. We were being told, being shown what we should think about ourselves, told that we were both feared as predators and lepers, but also that we should be afraid of those unlike us who may wish us harm. And while we were being fed this narrative, people outside the community were absorbing that same information, learning what to think about us based on these depictions, that our suffering and our deaths were not only occasionally justified, not only imminent, a fact of life, but that our deaths, they were just for their entertainment. Which is why when a depiction of queer love, queer life, and death is handled well, carefully, is crafted with love, it can change the world. So, it's 2003, and a fungal infection has spread throughout the population, turning them into infectious zombies. One bite, you nasty. We meet Bill, a prepper libertarian with the Alexander Skarsgård flag on his wall and a cute little doomsday bunker. Outside his hidey hole, the US military is gathering up citizens to bring them to a quarantine zone, which is American English for kill them and throw them in a ditch zone. But they didn't get our Bill, as his paranoid anti-authority vibe kind of super helpful during an apocalypse. I'm pro-prepper, and he's adorable. He's so proud when the soldiers fail to find his secret basement.
Not today, you New World Order jackboot fucks.
Based in Bill Pilled. Honestly, it's not Bill who should have been worried. Homeboy has more guns down there than in a Walmart superstore. Those soldiers should have been shaking. But they weren't, because he only cared about protecting himself. He said, first they came for the annoying idiots next door and I did nothing because I literally didn't care about you. So Bill is now the sole resident of the town, and he gets to work stocking up on the essentials like duct tape and tubing and, wine. He works to fortify the area using fencing, tripwires, holes, and cameras. It's this whole montage of him preparing the town, prepper stuff, hooking up generators, chopping wood. You ever wish you were a log? 4 years later, and Bill is looking pretty much the same, and he's clearly settled into his new solitary life. That is, until a survivor from the Baltimore quarantine zone falls in a trap outside his perimeter. It's Frank. It's our boy Frank. Damn, imagine this man in your hole. I mean, you don't have to imagine it, but I know Bill is. Frank is gorgeous, he's charming, he's sarcastic.
If I feed you, then every bum you talk to about it is gonna show up here looking for a free lunch. And this is not an Arby's.
Well, Arby's didn't have free lunch, it was a restaurant.
Bill takes Frank back to his very fortified but still lovely home and gets to work on preparing dinner for him as Frank showers and then explores the house. I love how he takes some time out of the apocalypse to be judgy right as Bill comes bursting through the door so suddenly that it startles him. Frank could not hide his disappointment at the dust, and Bill legit could not hide his excitement for getting to prepare a meal for this snack. And honestly, Frank's reaction after he starts eating is so rewarding.
What the fuck?
So eloquent.
Everything tastes good when you're starving.
And finally, after 4 years, Bill has the chance to impress someone with his extensive knowledge of stolen wine and stolen wine pouring skills.
I know I don't seem like the type.
No, you do.
This is the first of many moments where you get to see how strong their initial connection is. That Frank really sees Bill for exactly who he is. Before Frank goes to leave, he gushes over Bill's beautiful piano. Frank is super excited to play something for Bill, rifling through the music until he finds something he intuitively knows to be Bill's because, again, he sees him.
Release. Tales of Hoffman. Yuck. These aren't yours.
My mother's. Could you not?
This is you.
As Bill watches, he grows uncomfortable, and Frank suggests that Bill should play instead. And as he plays, it's clear the song has an intense emotional connection for him. In his playing of the song, you see his need for intimacy, born from a lifetime of loneliness. Frank asks Bill,
So, who's the girl? Girl you're singing about?
And Bill responds,
There is no girl.
Frank puts a hand on his shoulder, saying,
I know.
He sees him, and then he kisses him, and there's no rejection, no toxic attempt to fight his own desires, just a tender willingness to be touched and intimate. And like most of the times I have shared a kiss with a strange man who I was just in the hole of, Frank asked for Bill's name after the fact.
What's your name?
Bill.
Relatable. I saw critics saying that this whole scene happened too fast, that there should have been more trepidation between them. And maybe to some people their intimacy is escalating quickly, but so much of that pressure to wait is due to forces and norms from society, a society that's now long gone. Right now, they were basically the only people in the world, and each of them needed the other. And also, this is post-apocalypse. They could die at any moment. Why not just enjoy their time together as much and as soon as possible? Frank tells Bill to go take a shower, and when Bill returns, Frank is waiting for him in his bed, shirtless. Frank asks Bill if he's ever done this before.
With a girl a long time ago.
Often films and shows shy away from gay sex. It's an illusion, however obvious. They go in a room together, the door closes, the camera doesn't follow. Or they start kissing all family-friendly, fully clothed, and we cut to the next scene. Or it's the exact opposite, like that very uncomfortable scene from Brokeback Mountain. Gratuitous and very charged, a little chapped. But queer sex, it's almost never portrayed as natural or sweet. It's rarely vulnerable. Finding unobjectifying gay scenes about connection and longing, about love, that's not something I take for granted, you know? That sense that everything is gonna turn out okay. But watching this, I was like, oh, they're gonna be happy together, no doubt.
Oh, fuck you! Come on!
Maybe not this particular day, though. It's 3 years later, and they're having a fight. Frank wants to zhuzh up the town, a couple coats of paint, some shrubbery. Hey, maybe we could get twinkle lights on the electric fence to make it feel less prison yardy. Frank is saying that since they live there, it should be beautiful.
Our home isn't just our house, it's everything around us. We live in a psycho bunker where 9/11 was an inside job and the government are all Nazis.
The government are all Nazis!
Well, yeah, now, but not then.
But Bill is a utilitarian, and he doesn't want to use the resources on something that feels pointless.
If you say resource management, so help me, I will run through one of your tripwires.
And when Bill asks Frank why he needs this, one of the most important lines in the episode comes up.
Paying attention to things. It's how we show love. This is my street too. Just let me love it the way I want to.
Paying attention to things. It's how we show love. This is enough to convince Bill, until Frank throws in that he's also going to fix up some of the shops in town, and Bill scoffs.
And the clothing boutique.
The boutique? Are we hosting formal garden parties now?
No. But we are going to have friends.
I'm going to skip over the plot details here that discuss the other characters in the series, because spoilers, and also you should really just, watch it. But they do make friends. They get to have a life together. We get to drop in on one of their dinners out on the lawn talking shit over wine. They've truly created a gay Eden in the midst of an apocalypse. 3 years later, and Bill has stepped up his defenses. After all, he has something precious to defend now. We come in on them doing like a treadmill thing, but outside on the dirty ground and the floor doesn't move.
Just one more loop around. I got something to show you. Huh? Not that.
Huh? That sound of disappointment, I feel that in my soul. Huh? Their run ends as Frank leads Bill to a surprise. He's gardened up a strawberry patch, explaining that he traded their friends one of Bill's guns for a packet of seeds.
Which gun?
A little one.
I feel like Bill wasn't even annoyed. He was just taking inventory in his head. She's def a Virgo. Hearing Bill giggle here cured my sciatica. Not really though. Join my Patreon for a couple bucks a month so I can go to physiotherapy and buy strawberries. You get stuff too, don't worry. Adorable homosexual giggling aside, the vibe turns serious for a moment as Bill says,
I'm sorry. For what? Getting older faster than you.
I like you older.
Baby.
Older means we're still here.
I like you older. Older means we're still here. That one hit me hard. Frank would have likely lived through the AIDS crisis, having watched many of his friends or lovers die. Maybe it wasn't as world-ending for him as the current plague, but it resonated with me how much weight that line carries coming from him. And Bill understands, he sees him saying,
I was never afraid before you showed up.
Not on the strawberries.
This sweet man went from not today you New World Order jackboot fucks to I was never afraid before you showed up. If you're wondering how to write a bottle episode with a character arc, this would be it. In 2010, we see the single brush with danger the series depicts in their lives together. There are no zombies, but human raiders assault the town. The newly fortified defenses hold up, but Bill is shot and only survives because of Frank. In this scene, Bill is dying, yet still only thinking of Frank, giving him a list of what he needs to do to survive after he dies, how to stay alive, who to contact.
Frank! Right here. Leave the gas on! The fence will kill the rest of them.
Okay, yep.
I made a list for you.
But Frank is determined to save his life. He doesn't want to hear it, but knowing Bill so well, he knows what he needs, and asks him questions about his instructions to keep him awake and talking.
Tell me about the list.
You can't be here alone.
Well, I'm not alone. You're here.
The scene fades out with Bill no longer moving, eyes dim and motionless as Frank desperately tries to save his life. If this was a bury your gaze trope episode, it would have ended here, with Frank left alone and despondent. But instead, we find that Bill is not only alive and well, but gray-bearded and daddy AF. Frank, also aged quite drastically, has suffered from major health problems over the years and has lost most of his mobility. He's using a wheelchair and has difficulty using his hands, but is still painting. His favorite subject, Bill. Through the paintings in the house, you can see the progression of Frank's illness, with the later ones becoming more untidy, some left unfinished. But still, Bill hung them on the wall, plastered it with them. Our boy went from utilitarian rationing to use it up, baby, it's all for you. One morning in 2023, Bill wakes up to find Frank sitting up beside him, somehow out of bed despite having needed Bill to get him into bed the night before. Bill is upset, worried that if he was up all night getting into his chair, he'd fall asleep in the chair during the day.
I want you falling asleep in the chair.
I won't.
You will, and then your feet get blue. Bill. I'm not fighting about it. Back in bed.
Frank tells him he won't fall asleep.
Promise you I'm gonna stay up.
Why?
Because this is my last day.
Bill pleads with him to reconsider, but it's no use. He's made up his mind, and he needs Bill to see that. He tells him that he's not going to lie to him. Every day wasn't a wonderful gift from God. That he's had a lot of bad days, some with Bill.
But I've had more good days with you than with anyone else. Just give me one more good day.
And then Frank lays out his plan for his final day, saying,
Take me to the boutique where I'll pick outfits for us.
You'll wear what I ask and we'll get married.
And you cook a delicious dinner.
He takes the pills we saw Bill giving him earlier out of his pocket, explaining, and you'll crush all these up, put them in my wine, and I'll drink it. Then you will take me by my hand, bring me to our bed,
and I will fall asleep in your arms.
Bill's heart is breaking, and he says what most people would, that he can't do it. But then Frank asks him if he loves him.
Yes. Then love me the way I want you to.
And so Bill agrees. The day goes exactly as Frank requested. We see them dressed up and getting married. Marriage equality wouldn't begin to be legalized until a year after the infection started spreading. So in this timeline, marriage is something they would never know they would have been allowed to do. But still, they get married in every way that matters. And as requested, Bill makes dinner. The dinner. The same dinner he made Frank on their first day together. Everything is the same, including the wine. Except now, instead of sitting at the heads of the table, they sit together. And this time, Bill can't show off his fancy pour, holding it by the punt because he's too old. But rest assured, if our boy Billiam is serving rabbit, you're getting the Beaujolais. He's not a monster. Bill's love language has always been acts of service. After all, paying attention to things. It's how we show love. After dinner, Bill brings out a new bottle of wine, pours 2 glasses, and then empties the bag of crushed pills into one of the glasses. Frank drinks his in one go, and then Bill does the same. But as always, Frank sees Bill. He knows him, so he has to ask.
Were there already pills in the bottle?
Enough to kill a horse.
But Bill is not going to let Frank be burdened by this and interjects before he has the chance to say anything else.
This isn't the tragic suicide at the end of the play. I'm old. I'm satisfied. And you were my purpose.
Frank says he doesn't support it, that he should be furious.
But from an objective point of view, it's incredibly romantic.
And then the night is over, and Bill takes Frank to bed for the last time, and we never see them again. There's no shot of their bodies, no gratuitous, shocking display of their rotted, reanimated corpses. They lived on their own terms, and they died on them. Almost nobody gets a life or death as beautiful and autonomous as these 2 men. Hell, gay people in other media who aren't in the midst of a zombie apocalypse don't even get this kind of ending. This expression of a life of joy, a full life. But we do. We have that in real life. Even when the world feels like it's dangerous and unhospitable and uncertain, we still find each other. We still find safety and community and friendships. We find purpose and meaning in ourselves and in each other. And that's what this story is. It's the truth of the matter. It's the heart of it. Every little detail, every fight, every battle, every kiss, every moment, every choice, those are the things that make up our lives. Not just our suffering, not just our struggles, and not just our deaths. And the showrunners knew this. They paid attention. And through paying attention, they showed us love. Not too long after, 2 of the series' main characters, one of which was a friend of Bill and Frank, go to the house, and in it find that Bill has left them a letter with his final words in the episode.
I used to hate the world and I was happy when everyone died. But I was wrong because there was one person worth saving. That's what I did. I saved him, then I protected him. That's why men like you and me are here. We have a job to do. And God help any motherfuckers who stand in our way.
The note asks that nobody enter their room, and nobody did. Nobody buried the gays. Their dying wish was just to be together and to be left alone together. And the show honored that. Their final moments, their deaths, they were private. They were just for them. They weren't buried by the other characters for our closure or our entertainment. They were allowed their autonomy in life and in death. This is the opposite of burying your gays. It's honoring their lives. The last scene in Bill and Frank's home is shot through their bedroom window with curtains blowing, facing away from their bodies, connecting this moment to the opening loading screen of the game the show was based on. There's a good reason that a lot of people were saying,
when will we get a queer love story that doesn't fall into the bury your gays trope?
And that's because the story I just told you of Bill and Frank's lives together was vastly different in the game. The game without a doubt fell into this trope when it came to the handling of Bill and Frank. In The Last of Us Part 1, Bill lacks the same warmth and depth that he has in the series. In the game, their queerness is textual, but still a little subby. We never see Frank alive in the game, much like in many iterations of the fridging trope. Frank had left Bill prior to our meeting him. The only glimpse of Frank we get is seeing his body hanging from the rafters, having died by suicide after running away from Bill and getting bit. He hung himself in order to avoid turning into The Walking Dead, and he left behind a note.
Well, Bill, I doubt you'd ever find this note because you were too scared to ever make it to this part of town, but if for some reason you did, I want you to know, I hated your guts. I grew tired of this shitty town and your set-in-your-ways attitude. I wanted more from life than this, and you could never get that. That stupid battery you kept moaning about, I got it. But I guess you were right. Trying to leave this town will kill me. Still better than spending another day with you. Good luck, Frank.
When it comes to representation, things have changed. There are other queer love stories being told in shows like The Magicians, which had a similar queer couple growing old storyline. And the change is demonstrated by the complete 180 the showrunners did on this storyline. Yes, things are getting better, but for a lot of us, the scars are still there. We still remember. I still remember that at a time when no one I'd ever met in real life was like me, I had only the characters in media that were. And so many of those characters I looked up to all had their lives taken by others or themselves. So while this recent change is welcome, it doesn't rewrite our history. It doesn't undo what was done. But being able to see this, these two men in a world more dangerous and unhospitable than ours, flourish and get to live out their lives loving each other, it's more than I ever used to think was possible. In a way, this episode feels like an attempt to set things right, to show a different side to Bill and Frank, but also a different way of telling queer stories. I wish I could thank everyone involved in this episode for burying the bury your gays trope, because we've been here since The First of Us, and we're here till The Last of Us. Thank you so much for watching to the end. If you like this video, please subscribe, like, comment, and share it. All those things make a huge difference because the algorithm kind of freaking hates me. My expenses just went up nearly $1,000 due to month, so I'd love if you moseyed on over to patreon.com/KaylinConrad, where you can support my channel and get ad-free access to videos without sponsors, as well as perks like your name in the credits of videos and a few extra videos you can check out. Older essays, a short film. I'm literally not even making minimum wage when you consider how many hours these videos take, as most of my videos are a lot of work. So any help is appreciated. You can also subscribe to my podcast, Respect the Dead, where we drunk drag the corpses of everyone's least favorite dead people, conversion therapists, witch hunters, fascists. Also, you should watch this video next. It's dope as all get out, and I love it, and you should too. See it? See it? Watch it. Click on it.